there are conflicting reports around whether or not AmaZulu King Misuzulu kaZwelithini will continue with his two traditional wedding ceremonies to Queen Nomzamo Myeni. As of this morning, the Zulu monarch withdrawing the security detail and all other benefits afforded to Myeni. This was communicated in a written letter to the Director General within the KwaZulu-Natal office of the Premier. But in an IOL article, the king is quoted as saying he will forge ahead by forcing, or rather by force, with the weddings scheduled for next Friday and Sunday. At the same time, King Misuzulu also firing his right-hand man and spokesperson Prince Simphiwe Zulu, citing his failure to communicate crucial decisions. All of this, though, taking place on the eve of an urgent court interdict brought by the first wife of the king, and that's where she is fighting against him taking Myeni as another wife. Newzroom Afrika's Ziyanda Ngcobo is live for us in KZN, monitoring developments there. Ziyanda, good evening to you once again. And any word from the Zulu royal household as to these ceremonies that are planned, if the king is quoted as saying that he is going ahead, quote unquote, by force? Does that mean that some of the communique we saw this morning purporting to come from his office, those are to be sidestepped?
Well, it's very difficult to sidestep those letters. Of course, you're referring to the letter in which the firing of Simphiwe Zulu was communicated. And the second one is the letter which had the letterhead of the Office of the King that was sent to Director General Dr. Nhlanhla Mkhize, who is in the Office of the Premier. What we understand that, excuse me, at this hour is that there are a series of meetings taking place, including with the royal family, to discuss a way forward. There was also a meeting last night, Xoli, which actually led to those letters being written. The royal family really wanting to discuss the various litigations surrounding King Misuzulu kaZwelithini, including the divorce that he filed for a few weeks ago. There's been a lot taking place in this particular royal family. First off, we remember early in the year, early off in January, Thulasizwe Buthelezi, the former AmaZulu traditional prime minister, being sacked from his position, him saying that actually he only found out about his axing through the media. Then came the divorce. It's the first time in the history of the monarchy that there is a divorce. There was only once a separation with King Bheki Zulu, the current king's grandfather, that took place during his tenure. And of course now this urgent interdict, which may or may not be deemed as urgent, given then that communique that was sent to the DG in the KZN Premier's office, because that urgent interdict was seeking to stop the two planned wedding ceremonies. And there has been concern, Oli, especially from sources close to the Zulu Queen, who actually put forward those papers to interdict the wedding, that they want to continue with tomorrow's court proceedings because of the back and forth regarding whether or not this is taking place, and the kind of communication and confusion around communication that has been coming from King Misuzulu. In his own papers, the king says there's no planned ceremony, and yet when he communicated with the DG, he was actually saying, well, the wedding is off. So is there a wedding and is there no wedding? So they want the courts to at least make a pronouncement in case come Wednesday, when there's the Battle of Isandlwana taking place at Ngcobo, there's another announcement that comes forward. So on that note, Xoli, let me bring in then legal expert Mpumelelo Zikalala to talk about this, because in the lead up to the urgent interdict, this particular queen had written to the royal family to ask them to intervene in the divorce proceedings. And when a meeting was not forthcoming and the dates of the 24th and 26th of January were edging closer for those weddings, she then filed an urgent court interdict. But with that written letter by the king, surely then the urgency is off the table.
Not necessarily, because it could be argued in court that when I wrote to the family, I was trying to this other alternative dispute that is there. If that particular intervention fails, that I'm left with no option than going to court in order to say to the court, please protect my rights as they are. But the most important point would be, what is the court protecting? Is it protecting the marriage, or is it protecting the matrimonial property which is at stake? If it's the marriage, maybe it could be a bit dicey because matters of the heart don't belong in court. However, if it's the matrimonial property, then you must be clear and explicit. You are the person that brought us here. You are the one that must make it clear in your court papers exactly what you seek the court to do, so that the court can be able to decide, am I infringing, killing a fly with a sledgehammer, or are there less restrictive means in which I can then be able to apply in order to protect your rights, which will be very important during the argument stage, even to determine the urgency or the balance of convenience in this matter.
So the king right now is married. He's in a civil marriage with this particular wife that has filed this urgent court interdict. And she has said in her letter as well to the royal family that she doesn't understand why there are divorce proceedings, because she's never, prohibited the king from taking other wives. In fact, they were undergoing a process of converting from a civil marriage to a customary one. Is that something that we might also hear in court tomorrow? Because it would seem that those divorce proceedings were in preparation for these two wedding ceremonies.
It may be two ways of looking at it. The first way is to say, well, you've already acknowledged that there are divorce proceedings that are taking place. You've acknowledged that your husband has been engaging in these type of relationships before and didn't have a problem. So what's causing the problem now? But most importantly, what's the urgency with this particular one? You have accepted the other ones. You have accepted that the marriage or that a relationship did exist before. It's just the various steps that need to be undertaken by them until they are fully married. So why are you coming to court or to court on an urgent basis? The other way of looking at it is to say, well, with the issuing of those divorce summons, because they can't be issued without a mandate that comes from the king, well, the decision has been taken and that maybe there is no prospect of ever reconnecting. There's an irritable breakdown of a relationship. So on those bases, what is it that you are fighting about? That makes the issue in which is scripts about the matrimonial property and not about anything else. However, whatever has been stated there, the king will have an opportunity to say, in my opposing the matter and filing papers, this is my response to that letter, this is why we didn't entertain it, this is why we entertained it, and then the court will be able to take a decision based on that evidence.
Let's just say the court decides not to entertain the interdict, citing this letter sent by the king to the DG in the office of the premier to say the wedding has been called off, there won't be any irreparable harm, this matter is not urgent. And then come Wednesday, when the king actually has to take to the podium at Battle of Isandla and announces that he's going ahead with these two planned wedding ceremonies, what recourse would this particular Zulu queen have?
Well, there's still an option of going back to court, but I think this time they'll be much better prepared in terms of the ammunition to say this is what the king has stated. Initially it was a spokesperson that we had relied upon, but now it is coming from the king himself, in which he is saying that on this particular day I'm going to get married, so I'm now resuscitating the agency that is there. Of course, it doesn't mean that the element of agency will be done away with. They still have to be able to come back and prove to court, is the matter urgent or not? The important points being, are you going to suffer irreparable harm? Is there any other legal avenue or legal prescripts which is available that you can be able to utilize? In this case, there's forfeiture. Even after the event has taken place, after the marriage or the wedding has taken place, you can still go back to court and say, I either want you to declare the second marriage as being void, as an avenue available to them, or in the forfeiture, let me apply for forfeiture so that the husband is not going to get any or not all of the benefits that he would have received, and I'm going to be left with everything else. But in the identification of that, you must be explicit. What is the matrimonial property that we are talking about, so that you put the court in a much better light to say, this is the assets in which we are seeking to protect.
So not quite throwing the baby out with the bathwater there, Xoli. And a lot to talk about this week, and so much has happened just in the last month. The king has come out of seclusion as well, and a lot looking towards his address at the Battle of Isandlwana taking place in Ngcobo later on this week on Wednesday, as to how he will be communicating what has been described as the chaos and really bringing the throne into disrepute, how he will communicate what has just taken place in the last 24 hours. As we've mentioned, the sacking of, AmaZulu Prime Minister Thulasizwe Buthelezi, sacking his spokesperson Simphiwe Zulu, and also now seemingly ending that marriage ceremony between himself and Queen Nomzamo Myeni. A lot taking place, a lot of confusion, and a lot of answers that are being called upon from the AmaZulu King.
Quite a bit of turbulence indeed. Ziyanda, Ngcobo, thank you very much for the time being.